The night was cold, the rain had just stopped, and the city lights blurred behind the fogged glass of his car window. Adrian sat behind the wheel, staring blankly at the steering wheel as the radio hummed a soft love song he couldn't bear to listen to. His suit jacket lay crumpled on the passenger seat, his tie loosened and his heart exhausted. He had just left another charity gala, surrounded by people with perfect smiles and practiced words, yet he had never felt more alone. Everyone there seemed polished, flawless, and empty, and as he drove away from that glittering room of laughter and lies, he couldn't shake off the thought that maybe he wasn't meant to find love in the places everyone told him to look. If you believe that real beauty isn't painted on faces but written deep within hearts, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Single Sun Stories, because somewhere, someone still believes in kindness, second chances, and love that doesn't need perfection. Adrian had spent years building a life that others envied. A successful architect, a man of taste and vision, admired in his city circles, and yet every evening, when the crowds disappeared and the applause faded, he returned to a silent apartment that felt too clean, too empty, too untouched by love. He had dated women who looked like they belonged on magazine covers, elegant and accomplished. But with every failed relationship, he began to understand that connection had nothing to do with beauty or status. He longed for something pure, simple, and real. Something that reminded him what love once meant before the world complicated it. One gray morning, while supervising the construction of a new community library in a quiet neighborhood, he saw her. She was sitting on the steps outside the unfinished building, tying her worn sneakers, her clothes plain and old but clean. She wasn't there for anyone. She was feeding a stray cat with a little paper bowl of milk. Her hair, dark and unstyled, framed her face in loose strands, and when she smiled at the cat, something about that small, honest act made him pause. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But in that moment, she was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in years, not because of how she looked, but because of the calm kindness she carried in her eyes. Her name was Lila. She was 27, worked at a local flower shop, and lived in a small rented room above it. Her life was simple but not easy. She'd lost her parents early, worked her way through school, and now spent her days arranging flowers for other people's celebrations, weddings, anniversaries, and birthdays she could never afford for herself. But despite her struggles, she carried light in her heart. She believed in goodness, in helping others without expecting anything in return. She was the kind of person who noticed when an old woman dropped her groceries, or when a child was too shy to ask for help. She didn't wear makeup because she said her face told enough stories already, and she didn't own fancy dresses because, in her words, the prettiest things in life don't need price tags. Weeks passed, and Adrian found excuses to stop by the flower shop near the construction site. At first, he told himself he just needed a small bouquet for his office desk, then another for a friend's dinner. But deep down, he knew he just wanted to see her again. There was something about her presence that made the noise in his mind quiet down. When she talked, she looked people in the eyes. When she laughed, she meant it. And every time he left that little shop with a bouquet in hand, he felt like he was carrying a piece of peace he hadn't known he'd been missing. Lila noticed him too, not for his car or his tailored suits, but for his gentleness. She could see he was tired in ways money couldn't fix. There was a loneliness in his eyes she recognized because she had lived with it too. Sometimes, after closing the shop, she would see him standing across the street, gazing at the sunset with that faraway look people get when they're lost between what they have and what they want. She didn't know his story, but she could feel his pain. One evening, as a storm rolled in, Adrian found himself back at the flower shop, soaked from the rain. The lights inside were dim and Lila was closing up. When she saw him, she smiled and handed him a towel. He laughed awkwardly, embarrassed to show up like that, but she simply said, "You look like you needed somewhere to be." That sentence broke something open in him. They talked for hours that night, about work, family, dreams, and fears. He told her how success had become a prison, how the world applauded him but never truly saw him. She listened quietly without judgment, and then told him how she used to wish for a big life, but realized that happiness was hidden in small, unnoticed moments. The smell of rain, a kind word, a shared smile. From that night, something began to shift. Adrian started visiting her more often, helping her restock flowers, carrying boxes, and even learning to wrap bouquets. They walked home together sometimes, laughing under the dim streetlights, their hands brushing, hearts learning to trust again. For the first time in years, Adrian wasn't trying to impress anyone around her. He didn't need to be Adrian the architect. He was just a man rediscovering how to feel. But life, as it often does, tested them. When Adrian's business partner found out he was spending time with a shop girl, he mocked him, calling her a distraction. Soon, whispers spread in his social circle. Cruel remarks about how someone like him shouldn't be seen with someone like her. Adrian tried to ignore it, but the pressure built. He had spent years building a reputation, and now it seemed fragile under the weight of other people's opinions. He distanced himself for a while, convincing himself it was temporary. Lila, though hurt, didn't chase after him. She simply kept doing what she always did, living kindly, quietly, believing that love built on truth would find its way back. Months passed. Adrian's success continued, but his heart grew heavy. The nights felt colder, and the smiles at his events seemed emptier. One evening, while driving through the same old neighborhood, he noticed the flower shop lights were off. A handwritten note on the door read, "Closed until further notice." Panic rose in his chest. He later learned Lila had fallen sick, a severe infection that had kept her home for weeks. Without hesitation, he rushed to see her. When he found her, she was sitting by her small window, surrounded by wilting flowers she hadn't had the strength to care for. Her face was pale, her hair tied loosely, but her eyes still held that same quiet warmth. Seeing him again, she smiled softly and said, "You look tired." He knelt beside her, tears stinging his eyes, and whispered, "I was, until now." From that day on, he never left her side. He brought her food, medicine, and laughter. Slowly, she recovered, and when she finally reopened her shop, he was there. Not as a customer this time, but as her partner. The two of them built something beautiful. Not grand, not flashy, but real. He would design homes and buildings, and she would fill them with flowers. Together, they learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about peace. She never wore makeup, never dressed in luxury, but she carried the kind of grace that no mirror could capture. And he, once lost among the hollow stars of high society, had found the only light that truly mattered. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Single Sun Stories, because somewhere out there, someone is still waiting to be seen for who they truly are, not how they appear. And before you go, drop a comment below. Do you believe love still exists in its purest, simplest form? Your words might remind someone not to give up on it.